after the homeowners association documents and we've done the home inspection, now we'll get an appraisal done, a valuation by a licensed appraiser. That's not something that you or I schedule. It's something that your lender schedules. So it's kind of a arm's length. It's away from us. We aren't there for this appointment. What the appraiser, the role of the appraiser is to justify the contract price. So in our $100,000 property example, the appraiser sees the contract and says, okay, we are at $100,000. My job is to justify that value, or if it's underpriced or overpriced, come up with a value that I feel is more accurate to the property. So the appraiser is going to take a walk through the property and compare it to recent sales within the area. And if everything looks relatively close to that 100,000, you're going to see the appraised value come back right at $100,000. There's no magic to that. The idea is they're validating the contract price. What happens if it comes in low? If we've paid too much according to the appraiser and the appraiser thinks that it's worth $95,000, we have the right to go back to the seller and say, hey, we've got a problem with the appraisal. It's appraised at 95. We can't afford the extra $5,000 for a down payment. Will you lower the price? A lot of times the seller wants to get the deal together. They realize that there might be this exact same problem with the next buyer. Sometimes appraisals can be off and they can just be, out of left field. There's no way it could be $5,000 low. It's absolutely worth $100,000. But in that case, we just order a new appraisal. But in most cases, the seller's going to look at it and say, yeah, that sounds reasonable. We'll lower the price. Or we'll come down some if you come up to meet us halfway, something like that. So both parties are really wanting to get through this stage of the contract. It is a chance to protect your earnest money, to protect the investment. So if we can't get it together with the seller, then that's okay, because you can terminate the contract, get your earnest money back. Once we get through the appraisal, it takes 2 or 3 days after the appraiser walks through the property to come up with to create an appraisal report. That goes directly to your lender, and then you get a copy of that, usually emailed to you, and so you can see the value that the appraiser has given it. Assuming we get past that step, now you've got a loan package that is pretty well complete. It's complete enough to go to underwriting for the first time. The underwriter is the person who says yes or no to the package that the loan processor has put together for you. So in rare cases, does it come back to just a complete approval. Usually it comes back as a conditional approval. There are 3 or 4 documents that the underwriter wants to see in addition to what's already there. So the processor comes back to you and says, hey, do you mind getting me the most recent bank statement? We also need to have this information updated, those 3 or 4 items. You get those items back to the processor. The processor resubmits the loan to underwriting to get the final approval. At this stage, if we get the final approval, we get what's called a clear to close that says, hey, we are ready for the loan to go to the closing department. They draw up all of the loan documents, and you will be getting something called a closing disclosure. This has to be received by you at least 3 business days prior to closing. And this is the spreadsheet of the money, the credits and the debits, the money that you're getting from the loan or from the seller for taxes, prorations, stuff like that, as well as the money that's going out. So we see that down to the penny. It will have an exact dollar amount at the bottom. Now the closing disclosure isn't allowed to change much. It can change small amounts leading up to the closing, but not by much. And so you'll see that typically is going to be 4, 5, 6 days prior to closing. And then within a couple of days, of closing will have an exact dollar amount down to a penny. And this is the dollar amount that you will either get a cashier's check from your bank to take to the closing, or you get a wire transfer lined up. If you do choose for a wire, we just ask you to be careful about wire fraud. Never go off of an email. Always call the title company and talk to somebody live that you say, all right, this is a person who works for the title company, and then they will give you the wiring instructions over the phone. That's the safest way to go about it. At about this same time, a few days prior to closing, you want to set up the transfer of utilities. Now, the title company is going to take care of transferring water for you in all cases. The reason the title company does this is that water is a lien on the property. So if the seller hasn't paid their water bill in the last 4 months, you would be paying that water bill once you bought the house. But the title company is ensuring you that you will not be paying those liens, which is why the title company handles this, because the title company doesn't want to pay those 4 months of water either. So they get a final reading from the water company for this property as of the day of closing. They know what the balance due is, and they charge the seller for that, plus a little extra just in case. They handle the water for you. You handle gas and electric, because that is not a lien against the property. So you call up and transfer gas and electric, or schedule it for the day of closing, along with whatever provider you're going to have for internet or phone services. Trash is always a good one. If you're in an HOA, the trash is already going to be handled for you. Then we're getting close to closing. Day before closing or the day of closing, we're going to do a final walkthrough of the property, you and me. This has two purposes. One, the seller's obligation and duty for the contract is to maintain the house's or the property's current condition as of the date of the contract, with normal wear and tear accepted. So we don't expect to see any new problems with the house. We expect the yard to be in decent condition. This gives us a chance. We may not have walked through the house for a couple of weeks. The last time we were walking through it was probably during the inspection. So we want to get a chance to walk through, make sure it's what you're expecting. And if the seller has agreed to make any repairs as a result of our inspection, we'll get a chance to see that that's been done. So those are the two main purposes. Also, from your insurance company for hazard insurance, they will be happy to know that you did verify condition of the property immediately prior to the closing. So we've done the final walkthrough. You've got the money ready to close, whether it's a cashier's check or wire transfer. You want to make sure you're going to bring a picture ID, your driver's license. Make sure it hasn't expired. I did have that happen one time. So a valid driver's license. Some lenders require a second form of photo ID, but that's not always the case. Usually the lender is going to tell you if they're going to need that second form, but you always need at least one. Then we go to the title company for the closing. I will be there with you. The closing documents, there's actually going to be two separate closings that you have at this time. One is a real estate documents and one is a loan closing. The loan closing has more documents. You're signing 30 or 40 pages at that point. And then for the real estate side, there's probably half that amount of documents that you'll be signing. We'll hope to have had a chance to go through the real estate documents a day or two prior to closing, even over the phone, just so that you have a chance to see those, and you don't have to print them out. The title company has them all for you. But seeing it jogs the memory. Oh, I remember seeing this document. So it takes us 15 or 20 minutes to do that over the phone, and that way at the closing, not everything is brand new. The closing is going to take about an hour to an hour and 15 minutes, and at the end of the closing, assuming the seller has already signed their side of it all, then once we walk away from the closing table, you are the official owner of that property. There's a chance that you will have allowed the seller to stay and keep possession of the property after the closing for a period of time, 2, 3, 4 days, a week, whatever it is. But in most cases, you will be getting possession of the property right at the time of closing. So when you walk away from the closing table, you can go right into your moving truck and start moving stuff in right at that time. We will get keys and garage door openers at the time of closing, if not ahead of that time. And that's really all there is to the process of buying a property. A lot of different steps, but it goes very smoothly typically. So our next video then is going to be going through some definitions and terms for real estate that I think would be helpful for you guys to know. Thanks so much.